Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Hi, how's it going? Long time no see. I haven't been on here for quite a while and I want to apologize for that. I've been doing a lot. Your girl got married. I got married a couple weeks ago, trying to set that up, trying to shut it down, trying to get everything together. And then after that, my friends got married. So it was just on and on and on type of situation. But yeah, I got married. My friends got married. It's been a crazy last month. I'm from Alberta. COVID is crazy. The world's crazy. My lashes look crazy because I got them professionally done for my wedding. And now I don't have them. They're falling out. I'm getting them filled, so don't you guys worry about that. So yeah, thank you guys for coming and tuning in. I saw I got some new subscribers while I was away. I am so thankful for everyone. Again, if you don't know who I am, my name is Joy McLean. I am here usually every Tuesday and Thursday to bring you a true crime that has happened here in Canada. And if you can, like and follow my socials. And yeah, that is what I'm here. Today we got a good one for you guys. Today I was just on the computer doing what I do best, doing nothing. I was looking on Facebook and one of my friends posted this thing about a guy who is looking at getting parole, and I started reading about it and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I've heard about this case 1,000 times. I just never did any research on it. So I finally did. So it piqued my interest. It was kind of new because it just came into the media recently after 40 years, and it is a crazy case. So today I'm going to be talking about the Well Grays Provincial Park mass murder that happened close to Clearwater but closer to Kamloops in 1983, I believe. It was huge publicity at the time. It was crazy, and that is the case I'll be talking to you guys about. So stay tuned and get ready for that. I'm so excited to be back, and let's get right into this story. I'm doing something different this time, and I'm going to start with my eyes. I did this for my wedding and I really liked it just in case, and I also did it for my friend's wedding I went to, because when I royally messed up on my eyes, the fallout happened, it really did not mess up my makeup. So that's why I'm going to start with my eyes. So let's get into this story. So there's kind of two parts about the story. There's the family, and then there's also the crazy guy who murdered them. All right, I didn't put any primer on. Oops. Oops, where's my primer? We're going without it. All right, so the Well Gray Provincial Park mass murder was the mass murder of a family of 6 committed by David Shearing. I'm just going to be calling him David, in August of 1982. So it's 82, not 83, sorry. While the family was camping in Clearwater Valley near Well Grays Provincial Park, and that is about 120 kilometers north of Kamloops, British Columbia. Fun fact is I went to university in Kamloops, British Columbia. I went to Thompson Rivers University, go Wolfpack. That was the school that I attended. And I also played on the basketball team there for a couple years. So, fun fact about me. While media coined the term Well Grays murders, the actual murder site was beside Fage F-A-G-E Creek, 18 kilometers north of Clearwater and 18 kilometers south of the Grey Wells entrance. So wasn't 100% in Clearwater, but it was close. The Johnsons set out. They were going to have a glorious 2-week camping vacation in Well Grays Park, one of British Columbia's largest and most rugged national park and reclaimed areas. It is absolutely beautiful there. I used to go there as a child. Bob Johnson and his wife Jackie and their 2 daughters, Janet, 13 years old, and Karen, 11, not a name that you hear often anymore, unless it's a white person yelling at someone, left their home in Kelowna with the intentions of meeting up with Jackie's retired parents just to go for, a nice family vacation. It's kind of the end of summer. Kids are going back to school. Let's just get out one more time and see what happens. That's kind of the vibe they were going for. George and Edith was the parents' name. The Bentleys were avid campers, and they recently purchased a 1981 Ford Camper Special for the trip. and they had secured a 10-foot aluminum boat to it. So they were like, we're going to have a good time. Everyone's going to love it. This was a closely knit family, 3 generations of compatible, loving individuals who wanted to spend a lot of time together. A very, very close family, which makes it even harder, right? So they go out on this camping trip. All is well, love and war. I don't know why I said that, but all is well. You know, they just want to spend time with their family. They're really enjoying themselves. All that fun stuff. But then 2 weeks passed and Bob didn't report to work. So this was very rare for the family, and his workplace employment was like, this is weird. In over 20 years, he never missed work, and if he did, he would probably call. As a result, he failed to return from his camping trip, and he was reported missing by his co-workers. So today I'm using the Pinky Rose cosmetic palette, and then this Morphe palette, which is one of the new ones. So the two I'm going to be dipping into today, just so you guys know. So the search of the 2 vehicles and their occupancy centers on the Well Gray area is kind of like mostly where they focused at this time, where the family like planned to be, right? They kind of like, okay, we'll check there first, then we'll go on. A massive search failed to turn up any signs of the families. And on September 13th, about a month after the Johnsons had been expected to be home, a mushroom picker told police that he came across a burnt out vehicle deep in the parking area, similar to the one driven by the Bob Johnson. So he's like, hey, I found this Ford, looks kind of like the one that Bob and his family were using. I don't know if it is them, but want to come check it out. It's pretty much what was going on. So, and it was a mushroom picker, and they didn't really explain what mushrooms he was picking, so could have been anything. So investigation RCMP officers led by Sergeant Michael Eastham, I believe is how you pronounce his name, examined the burnout vehicle. Inside, among the melted glass, I can't read, like always, and glass, was indication of bodies of the 4 missing adults. They had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber. The bodies had been literally cremated. So by the time they got there, they were like, there's signs of the body, but you know, they can't really say everything because it was such burnt. It was burnt to a crisp that it was like, there was nothing that they could really do about it. Like, there's bones, there's stuff like that, but everything else cremated, like they said, which is really sad. So during an interview with Eastham, he said that he opened the truck of the 78 and he froze in horror. He viewed the burned remains of what was once 2 vibrant young girls, 2 proud parents, a loving family. There was very little left of the children, he said. So it was just carnage. The officer could make out skull fragments. They found the truck, or the car that the family was using, and at this time they put together a very large manhunt for the camper. That was the one thing that they were missing at this point, was the camper. So they had tracking dogs, helicopters, manpower. The RCMP could muster any employee that they had in the search for the Bentley's campers. I just don't get why it keeps going back and forth from Bentley's and Johnsons. We're going to call them the Johnsons from now on. Despite public interest in the cruel murders that happened, when they came out that they were incinerated pretty much in the back of their own vehicle, sources utilized the vehicle was not found. So they kind of were like, oh, you know, we never found much. Like, they found out about the murders, everyone, and then they were like, hey, well, I want to keep hearing about the story, because as you know, with people just like me, we have a huge fascination with people who get murdered, and we love serial killers and all that fun stuff. And sometimes when these cases first come out and they blow up, people get really involved when they shouldn't have. So meanwhile, investigators located what they felt was the murder site, some 20 kilometers from where the burnt out car was found. It was in an area known as Old Bear Creek. So they found some beer, a brand known to be one of Bob's favorite. And then they found another unopened can cooling in a stream nearby. Also found 2 sticks with sharp ends, probably used by the 2 girls to have, roast marshmallows. I used to do that with my sister when I was younger. We went camping as a family. And yeah, we always had, even if we never used them, like we had real pokers and stuff like that. Me and my sister would always try to carve something. So they found all those things kind of near the area. So they kind of just assumed like this is the place where they must have been murdered. It was at this stage of the investigation when police were given the information that the camper, exactly fitting the description of the owned by the Johnsons, had been seen in North Battleford, Saskatchewan. Oh, put too much on that eye. So this is when like they were kind of like, oh, okay, the guy took the camper and like dipped, right? That's what the RCMP and stuff were kind of thinking. Like they, oh, okay. Like he killed the family, needed the camper, and now drove it. To me, if I was a murderer and I was going to go, I probably wouldn't take evidence with me. Probably just leave that at the scene of the crime. But, you know, I'm not a murderer that we know of. Just kidding, I'm not. So they're like, oh, it's in North Saskatchewan, driven by 2 French male-speaking people. The information was at first a series of sightings that led police down a trail, which in the end proved to be false. These 2 individuals just had a matching vehicle of the same vehicle that they were looking for, which kind of sucks for the individuals who had it, because they're like, people like going crazy over them, and they didn't even do anything. So yeah, the RCMP, they went all the way to like Saskatchewan. They and all these false sightings of these people. They're like, oh, we got this, right? They're like, and you know what? People didn't know it was false sightings. Could you imagine if you didn't report it and you saw it and it turned out to be the guy who just murdered a family of 6? So it would be sad. You would be sad. So again, other sightings indicated the unit was still heading east, and because the occupants spoke French, it was assumed that they were just going to Quebec, which makes sense. And in April 1983, a television reenactment of the killings was filmed on the site of the murders, which was then broadcasted across Canada. And because of this, police hoped that it would spark someone's memory of that day and that night, and maybe that somebody might have saw something that they're like, oh, okay, I saw this that night in that area. It might be of use. It's kind of what the RCMP were kind of hoping, and they did everything that they possibly could. They even like had the same 1980 Ford camper down to the last details, including the aluminum boat that they had strapped to the roof. And in May of 1983, they drove the camper across from British Columbia to Quebec, again to hope that somebody might, you know, kind of be like, oh, I've seen that again, and then give them some sort of insight to where they go, because at this point it is kind of like a lost cause. They don't have many leads, so it was kind of really sad, actually. Also, since they had this, like, they made the camper, they were doing all this stuff, there was no leads for that, but they also held press conferences across the country trying to get somebody to be like, hey, we know something. In all, wanted camper units were reported seeing 1,300 individuals. Nothing came across that was actually worth it. And they kept their efforts going to find the mass murderer, to see who did it. The RCMP posted a $7,500 reward, printed 10,000 posters, sent them to police detachments in the post office across North America. On October 18th, 1983, about 14 months after the Johnsons and the Bentleys disappeared, 2 forest rangers came across a truck/a camper on a trophy mountain only 20 kilometers from the murder site and about 30 kilometers where the Johnsons' car was located. Because of the location of the truck, police figured a man was involved. The remote side roads would only be known by some families near the area, and it was kind of a trucking road. We all know I can't do eyeliner and talk. The reason why they thought it was a male was just because there was a lot of... Okay, I'm gonna do my eyeliner. So the spot was only... I don't know why I did this with my hand, but you couldn't see because it was off camera. So the spot was only 15 minutes away from the murder site and 20 miles away from the Johnson's car. Was located on a different side of the mountain. So not the easiest accessible thing to be. It had been burned using something to accelerate, kind of the same thing that was in the car to accelerate the heat, probably gasoline mixed with something else. The truck was hidden, and it appeared that it had an attempt to drive the truck into a gore, but logs had blocked the path. So instead they're like, let's burn it. Burn this thing to a crisp. You know, honestly, now that I'm thinking of it, killing people in a camper and burning it, there is a case really close to home here where the exact same thing happened, and I might now explore that one a little bit more. It's a very touchy case. Every time I saw the photos of the individuals, it really made me sad. So that's why I never did it. So yeah, back to the story. Off topic again, right? I'm also cooking at the same time, doing a lot of stuff today. So I'm using the L'Oreal Infallible, and I use the e.l.f. Poreless. I like my drugstore makeup, just so you know. So don't get mad. So yeah, but you know, he was trying to drive it into a goal, but that didn't happen because of the logs. Police lifted the wreck out of the area with a helicopter and transported it to the RCMP crime lab in Vancouver. The boat remains provided no clues because everything was on fire and burnt to a crisp. So it's hard to get any type of, you know, evidence from that. But the location was of interest just because not a lot of people know that area. It's kind of a hard place to get at. And again, the same thing like here with the case, the Travis Vader case here in Alberta, the back roads to get there is not a lot of people know how to use it, and only some families know how to use it. So that's why it became a lot of interest about the location of the vehicle and where it was, because not a lot of people know how to get there. The abandoned logging road on the Trophy Mountain was not easily accessible. The location was reconfirmed. A local was most likely to be involved outside, where it would have been unlikely if it was somebody else. Only locals really know how to get to that road. So that's why RCMP were like, let's check this out. The RCMP started questioning possible suspects again near Clearwater, trying to figure out, you know, who did this. Since now they're kind of like, oh, it's somebody local. They started going door to door in the small community and questioned everyone in town a second time, just in case something, you know, maybe somebody jogged the memory. Maybe somebody knew something that they didn't want to tell them before. Just stuff like that. In all, the RCMP received over 13,000 tips involving this case. And most of them kind of were like, nothing great, nothing important. And then they received one from about a guy named David Shearing, which kind of piqued their interest a little bit. My dog's walking around, sorry if you can hear him. So they received this tip about David William Schnurr. He was 24 at the time. Oh, it's gonna be a hard blend up against the eyes. So he was 24 at the time, who lived locally and was identified as someone... Chicken's done. So David, he was locally, he lived there. He was somebody who was told... So someone told police over a year earlier that David had he was a little unique in a way, about how to re-register for pickup and repair a hole in the door. David lived 3 miles from the site of the murders, and police had never released this information about the bullet hole. David he was involved in a hit and run a while ago before this. In a hit and run earlier, the Mounties learned that 23-year-old David had previously been in trouble with the law. He had been arrested for assault, drinking and driving, possession. David had lived in the area of his whole life and knew the parks and every road around it, around the mountain. So he's looking like a pretty good suspect right now, right? He knows everything. He's a local. He isn't that nice of a person. He has prior convictions. Some weird stuff going on next door. We can let you know that. I got some sketchy stuff that happens around my neck of the woods. So the RCMP located him around the Trouble Ridge north of Kamloops, where he was to appear in court a few days for possession of stolen property. He had a charge of that. In an area, he was taken into custody for questioning, although he had they had like no evidence whatsoever on this guy. It was word of mouth. Police felt that this guy, David, is their guy. They said, I think this is him. He's sketchy. He knows everything around the area. Yes, we have no evidence besides somebody saying that he's trying to re-register this Ford. That was the same Ford that was missing there, and it had bullet holes in it. Other than that, nothing on this guy. Despite this guy being sketchy, he did have a very respectable family. They were nice people. They had his father was a prison guard, even though he was deceased, kind of stuff like that. The brother was a sheriff. David had graduated from high school and also had his mechanics diploma or whatever you get, ticket. So very respectable family. People really, a lot of people knew him. You grow up in a small town. I'm from a small town. You grow up in a small town, everyone knows you. And they only know you for really one thing. Like, I'm known as the basketball girl. I will always be known as the basketball girl. Doesn't matter how much I branch out, what I do for the community, what happens in my life. Like, I got married. They will all, I still to this day, oh, you played basketball. Yeah, I did. But there's also a lot of other things I did in my life, not just basketball. I know I still do basketball, but that's a rant. That's a story for another time, people. All right. So yeah, respectable family. People knew him. Again, small town. Everyone knows everyone. Blah, 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 blah. And graduated high school, heavy mechanics, went course, you know, all that good stuff. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detective Sergeant Eastonham, this guy's back at it again, and Constable Ken were convinced that David was the guy. Guilty. No evidence. Guilty. Didn't talk to him. Guilty. They were confident, and they tried to get him to confess. Didn't work. Eventually, they got him to confess to the crimes by getting him to relax and to get him to appoint a lawyer. But they for some reason, right off the jump, they're like, this dude is an evil person. We gotta put him away for life, is what they were thinking. But they had no evidence. They had to get him to confess. David was actually technically the first individual to be interviewed as a suspect for these crimes when it happened. So it took like almost a year for them to even get a suspect. But they got one, and it was David. And it was just, you know, I guess it was lucky. It did take a year, so it wasn't that lucky for the other family members who survived, or, you know, just the rest of the family. But he was the first individual who was interviewed by RCMP after the investigation started and when the two families were discovered in the car. So it was pretty bad. The interview took place in the backyard of David's family home. So it wasn't that crazy. It was their farmhouse, around a mile from the murder scene. At the time of the interview, the murder weapon, Shear's .22 caliber rifle, hung on the wall in the back while they were doing the interview. A lot of people, when they found this out, were like, why didn't you take the gun and go do testing on it to see if it matched the bullets that you found on the scene. And the officers were like, I don't have the right into your home to take your stuff and examine your guns, the same as you don't have the right to go into my house and do that. And he's like, so why would I go do that to David's house? For an RCMP officer, you want to gain rapport, you want to get these guys comfortable with you, right? So if you instantly go into the house and was like, 22 caliber? Bring that to me. And he's like, where's your warrant? Then there's a fight, right? But instead, they're like, okay, he does have the gun. He's nice, being nice to us. Let's get him to like us before we jump down his throat. While they were doing this interview with him, they started to make it seem like the reason why he was being arrested was for that hit and run back in the day. Nothing to do with the murders. He was quickly confessed to the detectives and confronted him with the Bennett and Johnson murders and like, do you know anything about this case? David accidentally admitted to Eastham that he had been that he committed the murders. He was just like, did them, you know, kind of was like, you know, at Bear Creek, was not informed that that this was released to the public. He was just like, did them. Pretty easy confession. After efforts and more management and convincing, David confessed to the 6 murders and he eventually agreed to reenact the murders, which is, to me, fucked up. You don't need to reenact the murders. We get it. You killed them. But I guess reenacting the murders and then seeing the evidence and adding it together all becomes one beautiful reason to convict this guy and send him to jail for life. So he reenacted the murders and even turned over the murder family's possessions. So he was like, yeah, I got the shit too, just to be the cherry on top of everything. He handed the police over the 22 caliber that was on the back wall, and which matched the mortar weapon. The bullets and everything matched, and they were like, you had a feeling, you had a hunch, and you got it, right? Like, they knew that this guy was the one from the jump, and now they have him. Totally forgot to do my lips and stuff, so I don't know what I was thinking. I was just sitting here vibing out, and then I was like, maybe I should do my lips. Crazy kid. Just sitting here with bare lips, like. And there's also this bug that's been flying around my head all night, pissing me off. So, that's a little side story. So David initially stated in his confession that he shot 4 adults first that sat around the fire pit. And then he went over to the tent where the girls were sleeping and then shot them. Then he only wanted to rob them, but I guess like walking up and shooting them is a way to rob people, I guess. To me, I would just have my gun to them and be like, don't move and give me your shit. But he was like, I'll just kill them instead. He's like, I want to rob you, but too many of you gotta kill you. So that he wanted to rob them, shot them all. He told the RCMP that he loaded them all into his car, drove that night to the mountainside and set it on fire using gallons of gasoline. He said he cleared the campsite and then took the truck and camper to a nearby property, only to burn it later when he discovered how difficult it was to re-register it. So he's like, I had the truck, was going to re-register it, needed a bill of sale, people's signature, all that fun stuff. Realized too hard, so I lit it on fire. No sympathy for anything, was just like, that's what happened. You guys know I can't really talk and do this. Is she gonna mess it up today? There's a good chance she might. Very nice. She killed it today. She's beautiful. Alright, so that's what he said. He made my property, burnt it, was going to register it, take the stuff. Decided too hard, not that smart, so I won't do it. So he went home that night and we turned the next day to drive the car to where it was eventually found. He torched it there. A couple of days later, he returned to the camper, drove it, lit it on fire. He thought he looted the place first, took all the valuables, and was like, okay, I'm done. Going for a nice pinky. I like this pink. I find a hard time, like, these, like, pinky colors and nudie colors. I have a couple of them. They really wash me out when I'm very pale. So I struggle with that. So, yeah. But, yeah, so he came by. He took all this stuff. He was like, I'm going to loot this place first. Took the valuables. Later, police recovered many of the items that he had stolen in his house. Most were in his parents' ranch where he lived. David was taken to the site where he reenacted the crime. So he was like, I'll gladly do that. And a lot of crazy people who murder people do that. They will go and gladly reenact the crime and show you how they did it because they're proud and it makes them feel good. On July 19th, 1984, David waived his rights to a preliminary hearing. So all that hearing is for the Crown and the defense lawyers to kind of see the evidence that they have, ask questions to not only the defendant, but people like the RCMP. And then when they do have their hearing or their trial date or sentence, if there's like the RCMP say something different when they ask the exact same questions, they can look back and be like, oh, but you said this on this day. That's kind of the whole gist of that. So he said, nah, we're good. So they just scheduled a trial right off the jump, and that was for March 5th, 1984. But the date was postponed to April 84 after he waived his hearing rights. The day David's trial was set to begin, he changed his mind and pled guilty to all 6 counts and for second-degree murder in the murder of the Johnson and Bentley's family. So I just want to make this clear. He murdered the 2 parents, the grandparents. He murdered the Johnsons, who was the mom and the dad. So that's why they were going back and forth. I got really confused about that, and then I was like, 6 people? There's only 4. So then I figured it out in my head, and I just wanted to let you guys know, just in case you got confused. And it's not just me. So he said, I'm guilty. And he pled guilty and stated in the witness saying, I walked out of the bush from behind the camper and started shooting. I put the bodies in the car, found 4 in the back seat and 2 little ones in the trunk. I poured gasoline and just went, woohoo, and stood back and watched it burn. I went to the tent, knelt down, and I shot the other 2. So that's what he said. That was his quote. Verbatim. I'm watching too much news. So that's exactly what he said during the thing. He said, woohoo, like the people on file, called it a day. The confession was a complete fabrication. And at the time, the RCMP had little choice but to accept David's version of the events due to lack of evidence. So they knew something else happened, the RCMP, but without his confession and the bodies being burned and not having the proper evidence, they were not allowed to be like, no, he's saying the wrong thing. Plus, they wanted this guy to go behind bars for what he did to this family. So they let him say whatever he wanted and the version that he thought was right in his head, just so the guy could go to jail and just so the victims could have peace and the family of the victims could have peace. On April 16th, 1884, Shearing pled guilty to 6 counts. The next day, he was sentenced to 6 consecutive terms of imprisonment with no possible parole for 25 years. Instead of the purpose of the case was over, the Sergeant Eastham, who lived with the case for almost 2 years, couldn't believe that David had taken 6 lives because of the possession of the victims. He couldn't believe that the reason why this man went into the campsite was to just go steal their stuff, and because he wanted to steal this stuff, he was willing to kill 6 people. The RCMP officer couldn't fathom that, couldn't believe that that was the reason why this individual did that. So he was really he was upset about the reason why. He was happy that this individual went to jail for the crimes, but he didn't believe it was that. Before David's trial, Easton made a deal with him. When the trial was over, he wanted the truth from the convicted killer. Easton let David know that he would be writing a parole report, which would follow him throughout his stay in prison. So Eastham was like, I'm going to let you know that I am going to follow you throughout your life, and I want to know why you did this. At their meeting, David admitted that it was the 2 young girls that initially attracted him to the campsite. After killing the 4 adults, he sexually attacked the 2 girls. No one will ever know what torture methods these 2 young girls had to go through and suffered for 2 days while David dealt with them, and had to know that David walked up and killed their parents, and now they're being sexually attacked by this man and had to deal with it for... I've heard convicting things. I've heard that he's done it, he had them for 2 weeks or a week, and I heard that he only had them for a couple days. There has been no proof or facts about how long they were actually there. I don't know. So it was actually really sad. Today, David is still doing his sentencing in prison. He's in British Columbia. The officer Eastham is now retired, which is cool, which is good for him. Good for him. Long case, 40 years. September 16th, 2001. This is what really intrigued me to this case. So David, who killed the family, all 10 of them, killed the family, 6 of them. He kept the daughters, Janet 13, Karen 11, for almost a week. This is where I get the rig from. Sexually assaulted them before he took them into the woods one at a time, killing them, which is horrible. The BC man then put all 6 bodies in the car, lit them on fire. We got there. He now changed his name to Ennis, so it's David Ennis instead of Shearing, which a lot of crazy people do because they don't want the name to follow them. So he changed his name, applied for parole in 2008 and again in 2012. His applications were both rejected because he still had violent sexual fantasies of this type of stuff and hadn't complete sex offender treatment. So he was supposed to go to all this treatment, do all this stuff to get better, and he didn't, and still admitted that he still has these fantasies of what he did to the 2 young girls, and that's why they were like, hey, if you're still crazy and you're still thinking of doing this stuff, we're not going to let you go back into the public. No, thank you. See ya. So he got denied. They were like, sorry, you're officially going to stay in jail. So he didn't get it then. And he applied again in 2014, but then withdrew his request months before the hearing was taking place. So the reason why I saw this case was he has applied again yesterday for parole. He is 60 something now. He applied for parole and wants to be let out. If he is let out, he will be let out into a halfway house where he still has to, check in with individuals. He's not going to be on his own. He's going to be limited to what he does, but he's still let out. The BC families of the murder victims have requested to deny the parole, but the parole has not proceeded yet. He just put in the application. So that's what really got me intrigued in this case. I am going to keep doing the research to see when his parole hearing happens, and I want to see if it happens, if he gets approved or not. He is 60. Everyone deserves a second chance, but this dude how many times has he done parole? He's done it a couple times, and each time it gets denied. You should stop trying. So I will be right back with my final thoughts. All right, here are my final thoughts. I want to thank you guys for sitting and listening to this story that I have told. It was a little rough being back for the first time. Wasn't a smooth flow as I would like it. A lot of stops and starts, stuff like that. Me trying to figure out where it was. Next one will be better. All we're going to do is improve from here. So I really want to thank you guys for coming and watching my videos. It means the world to me. You guys know this. I say this every video. I just enjoy coming and doing this, doing my makeup. I don't do it often, especially with the job I have. I usually just throw on some foundation and call it a day. But with this case, the one thing that really bothered me was the year it took just to interview someone. I know the bodies were burned and stuff like that, so they didn't have much to go on. But it still was like, come on, guys. Like a year, you didn't find anyone. Plus, somebody told them about this guy trying to register a vehicle and they still didn't care. That was the other thing, was like, they probably should have got him a little bit sooner. But one of the good things was It wasn't like we dealt with like Clifford Olson and stuff like that where they almost had him, let him go, and he murdered a bunch more people. He just didn't. He just stopped. He killed the 6 people and never killed again. So that was, I don't want to say nice, but that was a good thing that we weren't dealing with a serial killer. It was a one-time offender. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens and comes across with this parole thing. I think that's super exciting. I want to see if he gets left out. Like I said, if he gets let out, he is going to be let out into a halfway house for convicted offenders. People know his name has changed. I'm sure it's not going to be such a welcoming environment. He is 60, so my dad is that age, so he's not that threatening anymore. But he can still do damage if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure my dad could take me if something happens. So it's just one of those things that you don't know. You don't know what could possibly happen. And there's a lot of good psychopaths out there who can really fake parole hearings and act like they're completely changed individuals. And the minute they get let out, back to their old ways. So it could go either way. I know that there has been an application going around from the families that they do not want this individual out, which if I was a family member and he did this to my family, I would be with them. I would be like, no, this guy is not getting out. So those are my thoughts, kind of. I'm just looking forward to hearing what happens in the parole, or if he's going to, because I know the parole takes a long time, and if he's going to withdraw his application again and just, you know, he was 24 when he was convicted, so he's spent most of his life in jail. Most of the thing everything he really knows is jail. And I know a lot of the times it's hard to come out of jail, not have any family, which he probably doesn't have anymore, and try to adapt to the real world when you've lived 40 years in such a stable environment. I know that's really hard, and that's why a lot of people commit crimes just to go back to what they know. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. I want to know what you guys think. Leave a comment below if you think he's going to get out, if you want to know what happens in my later videos. If I hear anything, I will be letting you know. And let me know what you guys thought about this video. Like I said, it was a little rough, but we're trying. We're getting back into it. It's been a month and a half, and through the month before that, I was a little choppy making the videos. I wasn't so consistent as I used to be, and I'm just getting back in the flow. So let me know. So again, if you're new here, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Joan McLean, and please follow my socials, and I'll be back for you guys on Tuesday. Get ready. Again, if you guys have anybody you want me to research, look up, figure out what happened in the case, let me know down below. If you guys have any thoughts about this case, let me know down below. And make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. There's also a bell that you guys can hit so you won't miss any videos that I post. Again, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys being here. All right, bye.